Welcome back to the 5 Fantasy Show. Now, to kick things off, Joe, just first of all, before we get into it in too much detail, how did your game week go?
Sensational.
Sensational.
But I imagine everybody's did, right? If you didn't captain Haaland this week,
what are you doing?
What is going on? Obviously, I did captain, I think 91-point game week.
Love
Closing
that.
in on the top 1,000 in the 5 Fantasy League as well.
Love
How about
that.
you?
Do you know what? This is my first. You can tell by the smile on my face. This is my first good game week. It's taken me 5 game weeks, but I finally had a good game week, and that is purely down to captaining Haaland.
Yeah, it is.
But we'll get into our teams in more detail in a little bit. But first, let's just take a look at the price rises.
No surprise, obviously, Erling Haaland, 11.9 he's up to now.
It's
That is so scary.
Back-to-back hat-tricks. I actually saw a stat. He scored, I think he's got the same amount of hat-tricks as Son, Hazard, and he's played 5 games.
Yeah, I know.
It's
It's scary, isn't it? It is actually a scary sight. You have to have him in your team at this stage. It is criminal not to have him in your team.
I was going to say, Salah, I think, got away with 2 assists. Yeah, luckily, obviously, the assist that came in the very, very last minute. And I think if you have both, the difference in the swing in points, I don't think was actually too big with Salah's 2 assists.
Yeah.
But captaining Haaland, I think, is just the way you have to go right now. Raheem Sterling's an interesting one. Another goal against Southampton, albeit in a defeat, but with attacking players, you just look for those goals. He's getting into those right areas. Chelsea do have some tough fixtures, but Reece James potentially back, which does have a positive effect on Sterling. But 10 million does feel quite a lot.
It's a huge fee, Raheem Sterling, isn't he? Given that when you look at some of the other players, you know,
around that.
Luis Diaz at 8.2, that's a big old jump down to a Diaz. Like I really like Raheem Sterling, and I agree. I think he's growing into that Chelsea side, but it's a Chelsea side that is kind of stuttering and starting, and you don't really know what that forward line is going to produce. So at 10 mil, I still think that's a big call when, like we say, Luis Diaz is in there at 8.2. And obviously we saw Liverpool blow teams away with 9-0 at the weekend against Bournemouth. Obviously scraped past midweek 2-1 against a very decent Newcastle side. But I just think Luis Diaz at that 8-point margin is just way too big of a jump to Sterling to consider him.
Yeah, I think Luis Diaz better value, I think, and probably will be across the season as well. Pascal Gross is an interesting one. 5.9. He seems to be involved in everything good that Brighton do. There is obviously, you know, you could go for someone like Gross, Trossard, but Trossard's 0.6 more expensive than Gross at 5.9.
Yeah.
Should we be looking to get him in our teams?
I love Pascal Gross. I think he's a great pickup. If you've got the option to get a player like him in, then you should have him in. But he's in that awkward price range, isn't he? Where, you know, you've got your Salahs, your Diaz's, you've probably got your Martinellis, and then you can't quite squeeze in a Pascal Gross. Maybe you've got an Andreas Pereira as that extra midfielder like a lot of us have. So he is in an awkward price range, and I think you have to be careful not to throw away assets at the back or up front in order to squeeze a player like Pascal Gross in. He's a good footballer, creates loads of chances, but I would still be slightly wary about bringing him in at 5.9, even though I really want to. I just can't squeeze him in. I don't know who to take out for him.
This is what I mean. I think maybe if you've got 1 or 2 transfers, you're probably not going to be looking to bring in Pascal Gross. However, on a wild card, you're maybe more likely to look at to try and squeeze him in your team. So they're the main price risers. What about the price fallers?
Yeah, plenty of names in this list, obviously. I think the standout for me, probably Andy Robertson at 6.8 now. Another drop.
Another drop. No goals, no assists. No clean sheet against Newcastle. He also got taken off again. Now, that's not the first time we've seen him being taken off by Klopp, and Tsimikas has come on. I'm not quite sure what's going on with Andy Robertson. I know he got returns in that 9-0 win, but who didn't? I mean, Mo Salah, the only one that didn't. But, he's worth keeping, maybe not worth keeping. And I actually said a couple of weeks ago, if you've got both of them, I would have 100% be looking to get rid of one. And I feel like a lot of people now are getting rid of Andy Robertson instead of, and maybe keeping Trent. Liverpool have got a couple of nice fixtures coming up. I say that, Everton in the Merseyside Derby's on.
That's a nice
You never
fixture.
Really know.
They always win that. They never lose.
But Robertson's one I wouldn't be. 6.8 million is still so much for a defender. And I'm not questioning having Trent, but if this carries on, I know he got returns, he got obviously a 17-point haul against Bournemouth, but that's not enough to be keeping him in my team. So I'm actually keeping an eye on Trent as well. But that's the only real name in there that you look at and think that's the only one that's affecting many teams.
Yeah, again, if you've got Robertson and you haven't got Reece James, for instance, then that's a big point swing that you can maybe utilise up front to purchase a player like Alexander Mitrovic or maybe a midfielder. So I would be considering that as well. But having said that, like, he's Andy Robertson, and you do feel like at some stage Liverpool are going to click. And when you have a player like him in your team, you're always worried about taking him out. I just think only swap him if you're going to be bringing in, you know, a Reece James or a João Cancelo. I wouldn't be swapping him for a nonsense player.
Talking of Reece James, I think that's quite a good talking point because obviously he missed the game against Southampton. No surprises, Chelsea lost that game and he didn't play. But it was only through illness.
Yeah.
Now, I was one of the people that took Reece James out.
Same. I heard those rumblings too.
I'll tell you for who in a minute because it did not go well. But I'm now looking to transfer Reece James back in because Chelsea are just a much better team and he is such a good FPL player. I think he's picked up 7 points in 3 of the 4 games he's played.
Yeah.
He only missed that. I think the Leeds game he blanked and obviously missed Southampton. But when he plays those balls into the box that now Sterling seems to be getting on the end of, what are you going to be doing with Reece James? Because I think that's quite a good talking point. Do you stick with what you've got? I know a lot of people benched him.
Yeah,
and I sort of wish I had now.
I heard the rumblings as well, same as you, that he was not travelling, that he picked up an illness. So I actually transferred him out because I had 2 transfers available. Yeah. I had a double free hit, so I thought I might as well just try something out here. I actually went for Granit Xhaka, weirdly.
But you did say a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think his new advanced position does mean he's going to be involved in more goals, but it didn't pay out at the end of it. So I will be bringing Reece James straight back into the team. I think especially given that Wesley Fofana has joined and he's going to operate in that right centre-back role, we're likely to see Reece James go back to his best position. Finally, about time, Thomas, the right wing-back role. Yeah. And when he's in the right wing-back role, he is a guarantee of goals and assists. So I think if you haven't got him already and you've got Robertson, it's an easy swap. Could be an easy swap.
Let us know what you're going to do with Reece James.
Okay, here's Rio's team then. It's awful. It is ugly scenes, Rio. I don't know what. I know, but what's gone on here?
Well, the
Sub 50 game week.
The average was 58 points, so it was quite a high scoring game week, but 46.
It's the lack of Haaland, Rio. We've told you enough times to bring Erling Haaland into the side.
Like, if last week wasn't enough to bring Erling Haaland in, then I don't think you're ever... I feel like now he's going to do it out of spite, just like he just can't bring him in because it's just too late. But back-to-back hat-tricks you've missed out on. Captaining Salah was okay, 10 points, he got 20, but Rio, I can't even like Haaland.
And also still having Neto and Leon Bailey, like Aston Villa going away to Arsenal in a midweek game fixture where they are massively out of form. Leon Bailey's not a guaranteed starter, is a whiff of a pick. Pedro Neto, like he started the season okay, but he's competing with some really strong players in wide areas, and Wolves can't score goals right now.
We said this when everyone was going with Neto and Bailey. We did say Neto is a brilliant player. He's so good to watch on the ball, but Wolves aren't a good FPL team. Maybe defensively they are because they keep a lot of clean sheets, but I wouldn't be having any Wolves attackers.
No.
This literally...
Why has he got Saka over Martinelli?
This screams wild card.
Why has he got Saka over Martinelli?
I don't know. I really don't know. Saka got the assist for Martinelli's goal, but Martinelli's so much cheaper. And Saka just hasn't started the season.
Yeah, this does scream wild card.
It screams wild card, Rio. I think you know what you need to do. This is the first game week, Joe, where we're looking at my team, and I'm actually happy about it. 84 points, my highest score by some distance. Yeah. I keep hitting the average. So to get 84 points. And can I just tell you, I actually made some, not poor decisions. I think for my team going forward, they're good decisions, but I took out Reece James and put in Lewis Dunk. And I was almost expecting the clean sheet because they're just keeping clean sheets for fun. Obviously, they concede 2 and he scores an own goal. So that decision wasn't great, but I am probably going to keep Lewis Dunk in my team. And the other decision I made was transferring out Mason Mount because you were telling me I needed to do that. And I think I did need to do that in terms of forward planning.
Good timing though, because didn't he get an assist?
Yes, he got an assist and Luis Diaz blanked. So actually that went really well. So actually, if I'd have kept my normal team, I would have got more points.
You would have, yeah.
I will take 84. Everyone else really speaks for themselves. Cancelo scored an absolute worldie. I think for those that were wondering, City haven't kept that many clean sheets this season, but for that reason.
I want to ask you, though, about Cucurella, because when I watch Cucurella, I think he's a lot better going backwards than going forwards.
Yeah.
I don't know, is he going to contribute a lot of goals this season?
I think so. Like, when you look at Cucurella, so he's got 2 assists in the 5 games he's played. And considering he only played 15 minutes in the first game of the season. So I think he will get assists across the season. However, I am done with doubling up on a Chelsea defence. Like, I'm not doing it. I did it for the first, I had Reece James and Cucurella. Whereas I know it seems like a stupid transfer to do because it almost feels like a waste, but I feel like I'm probably going to do Cucurella to Reece James this game week.
And keep Dunk.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think
it.
when you look at,
I
feel like Dunk. Yeah, I like Brighton. I want to have their like a defender in their team. And Leicester at home, Bournemouth away, Crystal Palace at home. Dunk is a threat from set pieces as well. I've watched 2
definitely.
Brighton games this season, and he's had a couple of headers where he should have done better. So I think that is going to be. I just think going into a Chelsea game where Reece James is going to play and going to be fit, he's too big of an asset not to have. I feel like I'm going to miss out big time, even though I do think Cucurella will get points. But yeah, really happy with that team. I finally played Andreas Pereira as well. He's got a couple of points on my bench before, so I was very happy with that.
Should we have a look at mine?
Sadly, let's have a look at yours.
All right, so here's my team. It's very similar, to be fair, because I think a lot of people at home will be doing the same thing as us, this sort of template structure, Haaland, Jesus, Martinelli, Salah, Diaz, Alexander-Arnold,
It's like
Cancelo.
a base, isn't it?
It is like a real base. And you know what? I feel like FPL might have got their pricing slightly wrong this year because everybody you speak to has the exact same template structure plus a few additions, be that Andreas, whoever it is. Obviously, like you, I had Andreas from the start this week. But my error was kind of taking Reece James out and going for Granit Xhaka. That didn't really work, so I'm going to have to revert back to Reece James this week.
Did you have Christensen? Have you had him all along?
No, I haven't had him. I bought him in as well. Yeah, I thought he was going to do the business against Everton. I was very confident about Leeds getting results against Everton, and it wasn't to be.
91 points, though.
91 points, a very solid week for me, but I think I will be bringing Reece James back into my side, so I'm probably going to have to take a 4-point hit.
Are you? So you've only got 1 transfer this game week.
Yeah.
And out of your, who are you looking to take out?
I will probably take Granit Xhaka back out of the side, bring Reece James back into it, and then drop Christensen too. But I am dangerously close. I was very nervous about Kieran Trippier this week, who's obviously on my bench.
Yeah.
Because there was lots of reports about Newcastle, wasn't there? That there was injuries galore. Trippier's not going to play, so I benched him. So I was kind of glad in the end.
I mean, 0. You actually got 0 points. You got 1 more point for Christensen anyway.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
Trippier's, he's one of those players that I really want to get in. I feel like
he's so good.
So good. He's on set pieces, and he just looks class every time Newcastle play. And I thought, I know they played Liverpool, not going to play Liverpool every week. So he's one player that, you made the right decision in benching him, but having him going forward.
And I have to say, I was also watching Alexander Isak quite closely against Liverpool for my fantasy team, and he is going to be a danger man this year.
The first finish was unbelievable. The second finish, which was so marginally offside, but the thing is, Callum Wilson, I don't know how long Callum Wilson's out for, so he could be a decent option there, but again, it's like that Mitrovic. I imagine around that price bracket where you're going to have to chase. It's going to be a wild card.
I want to get him in. I want to get one of Mitrovic or Alexander Isak in. I'm going to try and figure out a way of doing it because I really think Mitrovic is going to have a very, very solid season. He's one of my desperation picks for me.
But looking at your team, I feel like
I might have to sacrifice Luis Diaz or a Mo Salah. I don't think I'm going to do it yet.
Sacrifice Mo Salah and Luis Diaz for Mitrovic or
I don't think I'm going to do it yet, but let's just see what happens with Liverpool over the next few weeks because they are still a little bit rocky at the moment, aren't they?
They are, and I think that's what most people are going to do is give them Everton away and Wolves at home because after that, Chelsea away, Brighton at home, Arsenal away, Man City at home.
Yeah,
so after that becomes a really tough run. And I almost think with Liverpool, sometimes they play better against better teams.
Yeah.
They usually get up for it against better teams, albeit they didn't against Man United. But I think a lot of people are going to be giving Mo Salah those next 2 games. And because it's 13 million.
I know.
It's so you can then afford a Kane. You can afford a Kane and then you can upgrade another midfielder. You can do so much with that money.
And I want to get Perisic in as well. I've got to find a way of getting Perisic into this team.
Yeah, I'm not as convinced by Spurs in terms of... But again, he's a very attacking. He's an attacking threat as well. You're not just getting Perisic in for a.
And he takes both corners. He takes the corners with his right and his left foot, which is just like freakishly unbelievable technique.
Yeah.
And I think by underlying numbers, like his expected assists and goal creative numbers, even in his first 3 or 4 games, are in the top 4 players in the league from a defender. So I'm going to try and squeeze him in somehow, but it may not be possible.
I feel like you're thinking towards a wild card here.
I'm not.
There's a lot of players you want to get in.
I won't be wild carding.
No?
I can't see myself wild carding.
Well, anytime soon.
I reckon potentially in the next 2 or 3 weeks, if Salah and Diaz, if one of them doesn't kind of pick up major form.
Now, there are a couple of very big fixtures that go ahead this weekend. Everton versus Liverpool. The Merseyside Derby is the early kickoff on Saturday. We have spoken about Salah a little bit. I think giving him these couple of games tends to play well in the Merseyside derbies. Anthony Gordon's an interesting one.
Anthony Gordon?
He was actually one of my, at the start of the season, I did obviously do a lot of FPL drafts before the start of the season, had a game week 1. Anthony Gordon was in quite a few of mine, but I went against it because I was like, don't know how Everton are going to start. He did blank in the first 3, but he has scored in back-to-back game weeks. And he's cheap as well. So if you're trying to fit a cheaper midfielder into your team, Anthony Gordon could be I'm not going to put him in my team. But I think he's worth keeping an eye on. He played well against Liverpool. We know that Liverpool, we saw against Man United, a quick counter-attack. They struggle with sometimes. And Gordon is that player for Everton. He caused them all sorts of problems when he played them back in the last season. But I think they're the only real talking points ahead of the Merseyside Derby. I think we've covered sort of the main assets. Man United against Arsenal is an interesting one, Joe.
Yeah.
Antony, Manchester United's new signing.
Yeah.
Do you think we could see him feature against Arsenal?
I think so. I would be actually surprised if he wasn't starting in that game. I think United have quite publicised issues going forward, and on the right-hand side, especially with no Alexander Zinchenko, or potentially no Alexander Zinchenko, I think United might be thinking this is a good chance to throw Antony in at the deep end, see how he does. Equally, though, wouldn't be totally surprised to see him come off the bench, as we saw with Casemiro against Southampton last weekend. So I'd be wary about bringing him in straight away. It's a very tough fixture for United. I see Arsenal winning it anyway. I think they're a better side than Manchester United right now. I don't know whether I would bring Antony in for this game week, but in the future, he's definitely one to consider. Yeah,
maybe one to keep your eye on is Antony. Marcus Rashford as well. If Antony does play, we're talking Marcus Rashford. I mean, Martial's out injured. Whether, there's Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously there is options up front, but Marcus Rashford is looking like a more appealing FPL asset now, isn't he?
Yeah, and you've got rid of him last week, the week
before? My bad decisions have been...
To be fair, I was telling you to get rid of him. But he's kind of playing more through this central role now. And I think you're going to see Rashford play more centrally throughout the season with the arrival of Antony, because he's likely to see Jadon Sancho move to that left-hand side. So if he does occupy a centre-forwards role, that's obviously quite exciting, him being a midfielder on FPL. I'm still very wary about Manchester United assets. Still very wary. Yeah. I think Antony's potentially one to watch. I'd have Rashford on my watch list as well. Maybe even Jadon Sancho. But for now, I still wouldn't be touching United players. Yeah, and I think there's one Arsenal player, that everyone has got and everyone will still be backing. That's Gabriel Jesus. Yeah. And that leads us very nicely onto game week 6 captain picks. Yeah, let's talk about Gabriel Jesus then as a potential captain. I think it's an interesting shout because he's obviously having the season of dreams so far, but it is Manchester United who historically have been a big side, but at the moment look fragile at the back. So it's an interesting decision to captain him. I just think it's criminal to move away from Erling Haaland right now. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Jesus did score against Villa, another goal. But I think had the game be at the Emirates, I might be more inclined to captain him. But the fact is at Old Trafford, I'm not like you. I think in my head, I am going to be keeping with Erling Haaland. And we've had this conversation a million times. Is he going to be rested? Pep saying once we play every 3 games that Haaland is going to get a rest at some point. He didn't play the full game against Nottingham Forest. And he didn't play the full game at the weekend And it took him about 20 minutes to score a hat-trick against Forest. So even if he does play 45 minutes, that's more than enough time against an Aston Villa side that have looked incredibly poor this season, especially defensively. My head is saying Haaland, and I just don't think I'd be able to forgive myself if I was to captain anyone other than him. I think this season, captain picks are they're always important, but I feel like it's just the difference this season because everyone's got the similar players, and captain picks are the one thing that sort of people go different on. Yeah.
Haaland, I think, will be captain. I mean, you're going to captain him.
I'm going to captain Haaland. I think I can't bring myself to have a mistake like I made at the weekend where I didn't captain him pre the Nottingham Forest game and then I captained him for Forest. So I think I'm going to be sticking with him. I know that Mo Salah's got a great record against Everton and Liverpool have an amazing record there as well. And Gabriel Jesus is likely to score against Manchester United, who have a terrible defence. But Villa look awful. Steven Gerrard is close to getting sacked. The defence is a shambles. And Erling Haaland has scored back-to-back hat-tricks. I just think it'd be criminal not to follow the form there.
Put it bluntly, Joe. So we're both going Erling Haaland. Yeah. I don't think this is the thing. Last week they had some really nice home fixtures, and we were like, oh, who do we captain? Whereas this week they're three different away fixtures, aren't they? But if you're looking at the fixtures, Aston Villa away is probably the fixture. So we're both captaining Erling Haaland. That might change, but for now we're captaining Erling Haaland. Let us know who your captain pick is going to be for game week 6.
All right, that is the end of another show. Reminder, the deadline this week is the early Saturday kickoff, so 11 a.m. Any changes you're going to make last minute? Are you happy with your team? Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm looking at that Reece James transfer in. I think that's going to be probably the only decision I make this week, but it will be a late one. I'm going to listen to Thomas Tuchel's press conference and just make sure that he's available and fit before I make any decisions. What about you? Are you happy with your 91 points?
Don't know. I'm not even going to say. I'm going to keep it close to my chest. But make sure you like the video, hit subscribe if you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you later.